Hello people, welcome back to the Car Fun Mostly channel. I haven't posted anything new for quite a while, but I thought it worthwhile just taking a look together at this slot invasion guide. I've got one of these and I have some experience with it now. I have a few observations and I thought I'd share what I've learned, what I like and what I don't. Primarily made for Carrera circuits, the slot invasion guides. This particular one is intended for use in a slot-it chassis. It actually says slot it just here where the brakes would sit, and when it's provided with this nifty insert that in this case is intended to go into a Scalextric car. This is a Scalextric McLaren MP412C, like this one, and it's got this aluminium sleeve that pushes up inside the tube there. And I don't know whether you know, but Scalextric cars have a guide nowadays with a bigger diameter insert at the bottom, and it shrinks to a smaller one at the top. And what this does is it gives us the opportunity to run a guide with a plain shank. Now in this case, this guide is manufactured with a little shim, a little ring of plastic at the bottom there that functions a lot like a shim would. I like that because it minimises the contact between the top of the guide and the bottom of the chassis. The guide tube here, and I didn't notice this until just recently, actually has two different diameters of its own. This is a 3.5mm drill and it fits all the way through, and that means that the fits properly, and the top part of that aluminium tube is 3.5. But I've also got here a 3.7mm drill which fits in the bottom half but won't go all the way through. So there's actually a change in diameter inside that tube, and the reason that's there is because when a piece like this is molded, there has to be what's called a draft angle on this neck so that it can come out of the mold without causing a lot of friction. And that's evidenced by the fact that when we measure it here at the base, I get 3.62mm, 3.63, and here at the top I've got 3.43. So because of that draft angle, this aluminium piece has been manufactured to accommodate that, and it fits really well. There's no wobble. In fact, it's one of the best fitting guides in its tube I've ever experienced. There's just no wobble whatsoever in any direction, and it's nice and free to rotate. So now this has been used, it's telling me a story. Because we're running plastic against aluminium, we pick up some of this blackness, and you can see where it's been sitting on that ring at the bottom, and we can also see where there's a little bit of blackness around the base there where it's been running on the sides of the aluminium tube there, and it's also been touching in the top, which you would expect, but it's not been touching anywhere else in between because it's still clean. So that's how that's working. The story with this guide is that I took it to a Carrera circuit. I bought it for use on a Carrera track, and it was going to be used in a digital race. And what I experienced whilst I was doing practice was that the guide would be jamming in the slot. Now, I'm not sure whether you're aware, but the sleeve in the slot in a Carrera track is quite a wide slot. Hence, this guide's manufactured with quite a thick blade. And because it was jamming, in fact, the car would come onto the main straight and it would jam in the slot, and the tyres would actually spin. There was such a small amount of traction at that time, and the problem so bad that I had to take the guide out of the car and repeatedly do this, and I took a Dremel style tool like this, and trying not to damage the braid, obviously because the thing's still assembled, I was trying my utmost to slim the thickness of the guide blade. Now this is specific to that circuit at that venue, because that circuit is regularly used with urethane style tyres, and what you can see here on the guide that's causing all this blackness is tyre debris, which comes part and parcel of using, or tyre dust I should call it, that's part and parcel with using urethane style tyres. Now I've washed this side up with some solvent cleaner so that we can see part of it very clearly. I'm not sure whether it's close enough for you to see very well, but some interesting design elements to the guide. The brushes, I don't know if you can see, they're actually angled. These pieces in a normal guide are perfectly in line, but they're actually, in this case, angled so that the braids kind of sit at a very slight angle like that. I don't know whether I like that or not. I'm ambivalent to it, really. There's also a slight recess formed in this part of the guides for the braid to kind of locate into. The braid that's supplied with the guide, I didn't like. It was a very, very dull silver colour. Looked almost like aluminium, but it was quite thick, and I didn't want to run. I wanted to get my guide blade as deep as possible, so I didn't actually run the braids that were supplied with it. The front edge of the blade is a boat hull shape, so it's tapered inward to have a sharp point at the front. We quite like that. That means that it doesn't catch on any track joints where the liner might not be perfectly aligned. It won't catch. It'll slide through those joints very, very well. I also like the fact that there's a cutaway this direction at the top of the guide here, so that it won't rub on the chassis back here. There's just no chance, because this is a problem I have had with some guides in some chassis in the past. Another really, really nice feature that I've only ever seen on this one guide is the fact that at the bottom here of the radius of the braid, there's a radius on this bend here, which is something that no other like I say, I've not seen it on any other manufacturer's car quite like that. In fact, I think I'm going to start and use a scalpel knife to cut that radius, or at least a chamfer, into other guides that I use. Not that I've ever had a braid break there. It's just a nice feature that I like the idea of. So, yes, it's seen 3 or 4 hours of action, and in an endurance event. And I've taken it out of the car now to check it over, install new braid, and prepare the car for another upcoming race. Oh, another thing I noticed is that the ferrules that are provided with the guide, these are some of the longest ferrules I've ever seen on a slot car. There's obviously plenty of height in this area. That's not quite how I do it, obviously. I actually fold the fur around the end like that, and then I push it down the side of the braid. But the ferrules are really, really quite long. I'm not sure if they're too long and whether or not they're poking all the way and interfering with the way the braid rides on the rails. But yeah, all in all, there's a lot of things to like on this guide. I'm actually going to replace it with a different one, and the reason is that the next track I'm going to is a Carrera, a Ninco, not a Carrera. And Ninco rails, this is a piece of Scalextric track, and Ninco rails tend to be a little bit wider, because they've also got the nylon sleeve in the slot, and a little bit wider space. Now I've popped this guide into the slot there and taken a good long look at it, and the ferrules are pretty much straight down in the middle of the rails, and of course the braids tend to splay slightly as they come back like this. But I know that Ninco track's slightly wider, and I've measured the same distance on this equivalent, this alternative guide that I'm thinking of using, which is a Slotting Plus guide. It's one of those cut it to your own choice of length guides, but the main reason I'm going to change it is because the braids and therefore the ferrules down there are further apart than they are on this one. Even though they splay slightly, I like the idea of this being a slightly wider guide in this dimension, where that one's a tad narrower. And I'm not really sure what the material is, because I've never seen a guide that picks up this much dirt from the slot, and I don't know how slippery it really is as a material, because it's really quite a dusty surface that I've ended up with. Now it's not fresh out the mould. I wish I knew what they were, because I think nylon is probably the perfect material for a guide, because nylon has a self-lubricating nature. I don't know what they all are, and I don't think the manufacturers publish information about what they're actually made from. They're obviously moulded, and nylon does lend itself to moulding. But yeah, anyway, we're not talking about that guide, we're talking about this one. All in all, it's a good guide. I like the shape. It's got enough depth for Carrera track. It's intended for Carrera, so it's quite deep. Let's just get a number for that. 7mm, we'll call that. Yeah, I liked it. I've enjoyed having it. There's a few design elements I really like, but I am going to remove it. Anyhow, there you go. That's my experience of the Carrera guide. My thoughts, on the Slot Invasion guide. My thoughts on the design it has, and my experience of it in use. A little bit disappointing. It's a little bit expensive. Certainly one of these cost me, I think, €10.50, and it's very difficult to purchase. It seems that you either get them in Germany from the German website, but they won't ship to the UK, or else you're shipping one from the USA, because Slot Invasion USA has a very, very good website. At the moment, I'm not aware of a UK stockist of Slot Invasion guides, and so the way I acquired this one was to actually buy it from a friend of mine in Germany who bought it on my behalf and posted it over to me. So at €10.50 for one guide, it's quite expensive in comparison, particularly with some of these Slot Invasion guides, and you get two of these in a packet for a lot less money. Anyhow, I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you've got any comments or thoughts on the Slot Invasion guide yourself, please put them in the comments section below. And I've also had an email recently that tells me that over 95% of the viewers of my videos aren't subscribed to the channel. So I'd really appreciate it if you would. If you do that, I'm sure I'll make more content. Anyhow, thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.